Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Renee.
Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to talk to you, and I know that this is something my community needs, but we have to start with your story because it hasn't always been this story of like, let's get through the burnout, let's do these things. You got to that burnout state. Can you tell us a little bit about that backstory?
Yeah, I'd love to because, interestingly enough, it wasn't really identified as burnout. So that's really was one of my aha moments. So I am an OBGYN. So I was conventionally trained as an OBGYN. And what that means is I went to medical school, did a regular residency, was practicing for over 15 years. And I moved from a suburb of New York City to the country. I had twins and they were one, and life was just really busy in the city. And my husband and I, who's also a physician, really just wanted more time with our kids, not in the car, commuting, all the things that we were doing. So we moved to the country, about 3.5 hours from the city. And of course, what do you do when you move to the country and you're a former farm girl, which is me? I got a horse, and I had always wanted a horse since I was a little girl. I was 7 years old. I asked my dad, the farmer, for a horse. He said no. And I said to him when I was 7, I'm going to get my horse someday. So here I am, pushing 40, getting my horse. And I fell off that horse and broke my back. And I always say that's where my story begins, because I thought I was living the best life and doing all the things. And I was. But when I was going 150 miles an hour as an OBGYN, up every third night, delivering babies, up with infant twins, and now, at this stage, they're toddlers. And I went from 150 miles per hour to 0, to stop, because of this broken back. And I don't do very well with halting, especially abruptly. But I was on pause for 6 months because of pain issues and this and that. And I won't go all into that. But essentially, I always say I was Humpty Dumpty that fell off the wall, but could not be put back together again because my injuries in my back were not operable. They would just basically, I still to this day have broken bones in my back. And so there's the back issue, but what was most prominent over the next couple of years are all these other symptoms that I had. And they included it. And actually, I recognized them more because I was not going so fast. And the biggest one was this profound fatigue. Like I could not get out of bed in the morning. And, I pretty much lived all day on caffeine in the form of coffee. I love coffee. And I really, didn't have the energy when I opened the fridge. I looked in and I see healthy options, but I'm like, I'm so tired. I just close the refrigerator, go to the cabinet and grab some chips. And, brain fog, I just couldn't think clearly. I couldn't focus. I was gaining weight, especially around my midsection. And, the leg and energy persisted throughout the day. And at night, I would get this weird second wind around 10 o'clock if I stayed up that late. And so I went to my doctor finally, and I said, I don't know what's going on, but these are my symptoms. And of course, in the conventional world, again, where I was trained, it sounds like depression, right? Like you can't get out of bed in the morning. You really aren't interested in doing things. You just want to lay around. You're unmotivated, unproductive. Kind of sounds like depression. So when she told me depression, I was like, yeah, I thought about that, but it doesn't feel like what depression should feel like. However, I didn't know there was anything else it could be. So I said, that sounds fine. Why don't you just, whatever we got to do, just do it. So of course, antidepressant. So she prescribed an antidepressant, and I had all of the side effects of the antidepressant, and I still had my symptoms. I still couldn't get out of bed in the morning. As a matter of fact, I feel like it got a little worse. I got a little more fatigued. And so I stayed on the antidepressant for a few months, and then I went back for follow-up. And of course, in that world, which I was in, what do we do if a medication doesn't work? It's not that we have the wrong diagnosis, we had the wrong medication. So I tried another. And lo and behold, same thing happened. And at this point, within that 6 months time, I remember laying in bed with my husband and I said, I can't go on living like this. This is awful because, I'm running out of options. Now an antidepressant doesn't work. What am I going to do? And that's the only time in my life that I actually thought of no longer living, because I felt hopeless and helpless. Like here I am surrounded by my medical colleagues, and all of them are like, we don't know what else to do for you. And I'm like, if I'm in the medical world and I have these symptoms and they're not helping me, what is everybody else out there doing? So I actually got put in contact with a functional medicine doctor, which I didn't even know what that was. But at this point, I was so desperate. And I said, I got on the phone with her. And ironically, the reason I got in touch with her is someone gave me her name because at this point, I was selling anti-aging skincare because I needed something fun to do in my life because I was not practicing my full scope of OBGYN. I wasn't really feeling purposeful at work. Another reason I couldn't get out of bed in the morning, I'm like, I went into medicine to change lives, and I'm doing pap smears all day is not quite doing that. So I got in contact with her because, of course, she was called an anti-aging doctor. And so I got on the phone with her, and of course, I talked about my skincare. She's like, I have my own brand of skincare. However, let's talk about what's going on with you. And this, I described my symptoms. She's like, I don't think it's depression. I think you have something called adrenal. Back then, we called it adrenal fatigue and essentially adrenal dysfunction. Modern day terms, burnout. And I was like, but when she used the word adrenal, I was like, what? Like I learned about adrenal issues in medical school, but like extremes of the condition, nothing in between. So when she said that and she described the symptoms, of course, I'm sitting in my bed. Of course, I spent a lot of time on the couch or in bed, and I'm like typing it in as we're talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's exactly how I feel. So she said, well, before I get to see you in the office and confirm it, why don't you start this, and this, and I'll see you. And I have to just say, even without like starting anything as far as a treatment, just that validation that it wasn't all in my head, number one, and number two, that I finally had hope back because she was willing to help me. Those were the two biggest takeaways from that night. And ironically, my husband had gone in to take a shower as I got on the phone with her, and he came out of the shower because in this conversation, she also asked if I would like to join her in practice. And of course, I'm still Googling as she's talking, like functional medicine. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like root cause medicine, like that you get to the root cause of why someone feels the way they feel. And so he comes out of the shower and I said, okay, I have adrenal dysfunction. I'm going to do this, and this. And I am leaving the hospital as an OBGYN and joining this woman in practice and going back and doing a functional medicine fellowship. And he goes, how long was I in the shower for? And this was also the beginning of me listening to my intuition, my gut, and taking the leap when something felt right. And at this point in this conversation, 1.5 hour conversation, she made the diagnosis. I was exposed to this world of alternative medicine, that this entire different healthcare model where I could just change lives again and have my purpose back and give women that help and hope that I had lost myself. So I did exactly that. I went back, I finished out my time at the hospital. In the meantime, working at the hospital, I started this fellowship and started my treatment for adrenal dysfunction, which is not medication. It's a ton of lifestyle changes. And I always say they're simple, but not easy. Because when you're that exhausted, doing lifestyle changes, such as especially diet changes, are hard. Getting out of that cabinet with the bags of chips, that was hard, when I was really tired. So, and that's where, some supplementation came in, just give me like that oomph to get going.
Yeah.
And, I always had to put it in perspective. Like every month I felt better, but I always continue to this day to say, I didn't get to that stage overnight. It was years and years of like medical school training and residency, and then OBGYN, and then having twins, like one insult after another as far as stress on my body. And then the straw that broke the camel's back, literally in my back, was falling off that horse. And that's really when my symptoms manifested, and I probably had them all along. I was just going so fast that I couldn't even tell. So, fast forward to today, I've 7 years later, I'm here to talk about it and here to tell women, and so many things, including burnout, because now I'm still that mom of twins. They're now almost 14. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own health consulting business, and I see it a lot in both moms after this year-long pandemic and my fellow entrepreneurs. And so I've come out strong lately to talk about the reality of burnout and that it's not in your head and there's something we can do about it.
I think that's amazing. And that's something that so many of us need to hear, because I mean, that your story sounds, I didn't fall off a horse, but it sounds a lot like mine. Like I was stuck in a spot, and then I found, I'm not a doctor myself, but I found functional medicine. And
Mhm.
it was like, whoa, someone finally validated that, hope came
Mhm.
back. And I think that's so cool that you're bringing hope back to those people.
Mhm.
So as you're going through this transition, what were some of those like moments when you're in that fellowship going from Western conventional medicine into this functional world that you were like, okay, this makes more sense?
Yeah, I was like a kid in the candy shop, quite frankly, because here's the reality, like this is all science I learned in medical school. And not to bash our healthcare system, because I practice in it very happily for 15 plus years. And I think we can have the best of both worlds. But I was like, oh my gosh, I learned all this science in medical school. It was just glossed over by the fact that I actually had to take someone's group of symptoms, fit it into one box. And in my case, it was that depression box, and then slap a medication on it. Because in reality, I mean, that's how we're trained as docs. And that's what most people want. Most people are going 150 miles an hour. They don't want to stop long enough to do the changes that are really often necessary for completely recovering from things like burnout. So I just loved it. And, I have to say, I live in a small community where the biggest employer is the hospital. It's got 250 employees. I live, as a matter of fact, a block from it. And it's really interesting when I went into this, how people looked at me sideways, like, what are you doing? Like voodoo or whatever. And it's interesting now how it's really come full circle, because now a lot of people see me around town and say, hey, can I, talk to you about X, Y, and Z, or what would you recommend? They'll chase me down in our organic food store about supplements or whatever. Would you recommend this? I just heard you on a TV, news station or whatever. But and so now it's much more mainstream than it was when I started. And even when I started, I feel like it was a little more mainstream even back 7 years ago. It's not like it's 30 years ago, but it's nowadays everyone's looking for a different approach to their health, because they're not necessarily getting answers from their doctor or with a pill.
Yeah. And I think you said something that was really important, is that box, the box that we're put
Mhm,
in the conventional world.
mhm,
So speaking of that box, what if someone is already put into one of those boxes, and like you were put into
mhm.
that depression box? Like, where do you suggest, like, is it an inward seeking? Is it just knowing, like trusting your intuition? How does somebody get out of that box if it's not quite feeling right?
Yeah, I mean, it might be the right box. I'm not saying every box. However, I do think a lot of us can be helped prior to getting to that stage where you need the medication. And I do think it's a lot of being an advocate for your own health, asking questions, which I have to be honest, a lot of docs, and in defense of my conventional docs, again, my husband's still there and I was there. They are they are busy. They don't have time to really look outside the box, read all that's going on out there. They only have time to keep up with their board certification and see the patients that they have to see in the office. And back in the day, and I just heard actually a couple of days ago that our OBGYN at the hospital, he's making the doctors see everyone in 15 minutes. Like, that's all you have. Don't go over 15 minutes. No. And what that translates to generally is you come in, you ask one question, and or you have one symptom, one complaint, and that's it. You got to come back if you have another one. And, a lot of people don't have time for that. So I do think, it's just a matter of being your own advocate, doing what you can do away from the doctor's office. And again, a lot of that is looking up your symptoms. I hate to say it, Dr. Google. I mean, I went to medical school and all I get so many certifications, but there is a lot of things that can be thought provoking on the internet now, just to start to think, like, question, like, wow, could I have this? Could I have that? And quite honestly, if it's something as simple as changing up, and again, I say simple. And again, it's not easy, but changing up your nutrition and getting a little more sleep and prioritizing a little self-care on a daily basis, that is something you can implement. Again, it doesn't have to be a sprint. This is more of a marathon we're talking about. These are more like little changes that you implement. But I'm telling you, as soon as you start these little changes and you start feeling better, you're going to want to keep going and keep changing whatever you need to change.
Yeah. And that burnout stage is one of those, I know for me, that's probably where I'm at right now, because I'm in that seeking the answers.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit more about like what burnout manifests in the body?
Yeah, a lot of the symptoms that I have. So let's go back a little bit. So we talked about the adrenal glands. They are these little walnut shaped, they're no bigger than a walnut. They weigh less than a grape. They're on top of our kidneys. So there's these tiny little powerhouse glands that produce lots of different hormones, things that keep our blood pressure maintained and our electrolytes in balance. But the thing that we always talk about when it comes to this burnout is cortisol. And so cortisol, and again, stress is not a bad thing. Acute stress, it's good for us actually, to get up and have to do a speech in front of a large crowd, or I don't know, taking a test. That's all really good acute stress. But what we're experiencing now is this unrelenting, chronic 24-hour a day, 7-day a week stress. Our bodies were not made for that. So what happens is these little glands, these adrenal glands, actually produce this cortisol, one of many hormones, but we'll focus on cortisol. And cortisol is peaks in the morning. And that's, I don't know if you've ever realized, ever felt it, that boom, your eyes open and you can't go back to sleep. That's your internal alarm. That's your cortisol peaking. And then throughout the day, it actually declines ideally slowly, and it's low at night when the sun goes down. So when the sun comes up, cortisol spikes, comes down slowly throughout the day. In the evening, it goes down, sun goes down, and melatonin, our sleep hormone, comes up. So it's kind of on a teeter-totter with melatonin. And what happens is, from years of that chronic stress, and everyone's different. You're not going to expose two women to the same stressors, and one's going to be able to be more resilient than the other. It comes down to our genetics, quite honestly, and a lot of other factors in our lifestyle. But really, resiliency, our bodies are so different on so many levels. And a lot of times it comes down to genetics, and genetics put into a different environment result in something different. So again, years of getting beat up by whatever the stressor may be. And then one day, all of a sudden, and it may not even be one day, it's usually a slow progressive fatigue that people don't even notice until one day someone comments, a kid, one of their kids, like, "Mom, you never can get out of bed," or "You're always laying on the couch in the afternoon," or you noticing you're gaining weight around the midsection, and that you can't control your cravings because you just want the salt and the sugar, mostly the sugar for the energy. You're surviving on a pot of coffee a day. And a lot of these things just creep into our lifestyle and we don't even know it because we're so busy doing, we're so busy going, right? Got to do the next thing. Where's our to-do list? Da, 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 da. And so get that coffee again. Before you know it, you're at a pot of coffee. Oh my gosh, I don't have, and I can say this because this has happened to me. I don't have time to stop for lunch. As we're recording this right around lunchtime here in New York, let me go grab some chips and just keep going. And before you know it, that becomes our lifestyle. But the problem is those factors actually makes it a vicious cycle with the adrenal issues. It doesn't feed our body well. We're not getting the nutrients. It's really just further taxing our adrenal glands to the point where that cortisol secretion, that nice little curve that it's supposed to look like during the day, actually becomes abnormal, to the point where sometimes the cortisol is not as high as it should be when you get up in the morning. Thus, you can't, even with an alarm, you can't get out of bed. You're like, oh, you had a good night's sleep, but you still can't get up. A lot of people start asking questions like, what is going on? I slept well, but I still can't get up. Ding, 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 ding. There might be something else going on. Or, you can't get up, but you finally force yourself to get up, and then you're okay for a couple hours, and then you plummet again. And now you need that afternoon coffee or a couple cups or energy drink, which is not very good for you, but and again, you're surviving on those quick sugars and things just to get you through the day. That's kind of like a big wake up call that something else could be going on. And a lot of things start going on with you emotionally and mentally. You're much more irritable, get a little angry easier. You're starting, I don't want to say to withdraw, but you just want to you kind of withdraw because you're so tired. You don't have the energy to go out with your friends. You just end up staying at home. You start to put family on the back burner that's outside your home. So, it sort of infiltrates not only our physical health or emotional health, but our relationships as well.
I think that, and that's one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about, because I know that you also talk about libido and the adrenal fatigue or this burnout. And libido. How do these relate? Because I know that that's one of the big topics that you like to cover too, probably coming from OBGYN, but can
Mhm.
you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I speak on libido because it's one of those taboo topics that no women aren't talking about. So there's a ton of women out there running around with a libido that's suboptimal for them, but they think that they're abnormal because they look to their left, they look to their right, and oh, everyone else must be fine because no one's talking about it. So in 2020, I started talking about it and bringing it to light because just like other women's health topics like infertility, even menopause is a taboo topic that no one wants to talk about, or miscarriage. Like these are all really taboo topics that women just don't talk about. But many women, when I started talking about it, women started coming out of the woodwork like, oh my gosh, you're telling me it's not normal. Like, I don't want to say it's normal, but if you feel it's low, there's probably something going on. So when I talk about libido, it's generally just another symptom. And the reason I talk a lot about burnout is because pretty much the through line through 100% of the clients I work with, there's three key things. Number one, mindset. How do they think about themselves? How are they comfortable in their body? You know, how do they talk to themselves throughout the day? Do you wake up beating yourself up? Oh, like I can't get out of bed. What's wrong with me? I'm so lazy. No, you know, if you have burnout, you have burnout. But how are you talking to yourself? Because that's further propagating these burnout symptoms. Number two, relationship. We don't have to get into that too much, but ladies, you need to ask for what you want. Communication. You know, I know we all think we're superwoman and we can do it all. But at the end of the day, you don't get a trophy except for your own in your own head, and you fall into bed at night. So honestly, I always say there's 3 Ds. What do you have to do? What can you delegate? Meaning ask the kids to do, ask your hubby or your significant other or friends. And what can you completely take off your list? Okay. So relationship, communication, our significant others cannot read our minds. You have to say what you want. And a lot of our partners are really happy to give it to us. They just can't read what we need. And then number three is stress. And, you know, it's really interesting because generally speaking, it's more of an emotional stress, although physical stressors like a chronic health condition can definitely do the same thing. But all three of those were the top three that I see in every single woman I work with a low libido. So, you know, and another reason I talk about it is because as an OBGYN, I was kind of taught there's not a lot of studies on women in low libido, by the way, it's all in men. We are very hard to study because we're complex. We have two hormones and they vary throughout the month when you're still cycling, right? You can't control us. So we're not ideal for studies. And you know what the problem is too, we go back to that conventional must be testosterone because that's the problem generally in men. I used to take care of men. I took care of them for 4 years in my practice. They are so different than we ladies. Like they are so easy. They have one hormone. If it's low, they have a lot of symptoms. You fix it, they're fixed. We're not like that at all. You know, and for 15 years in OBGYN and another, you know, 7 years now in functional medicine, I have tried testosterone in women. Doesn't oftentimes doesn't work. It has other benefits as well, but when we're talking about libido, and number two, I've had women in their 20s with a low libido when it shouldn't be that way, and women in their 70s with an amazing libido, right? So if we're just talking about testosterone, so what I have studied, and that's why I call myself a libidoologist, I study libido, is that it's multifactorial for women. And it's generally more than one thing, which is why I also love functional medicine because I don't just take care of one thing. Like we have libido, right? But what is causing that? And it's not generally just one thing. So again, those three things, including stress slash burnout, is really if you're exhausted and you're, you know, getting up in the morning, you're running your own business, you're trying to take care of the kids. They just got done with their virtual schooling. We're all out for the summer, but now they're all home, right? Like, and not in school. So now they're like, mom, what are we doing? It's like, you're taking them to camps, you're still cooking the meals, going the grocery shopping. You're tired. You know, last thing you want to do at night generally is get busy. Like I always say, you got to get out of your head to want to get into bed. But the problem is, number one, there's that fatigue issue. And number two, a lot of women are having a hard time shutting their brains off. So it's a very integral part of low libido. And, you know, many times when I have women approach me and say, tell me how to fix it, I'm like, oh, this is a big loaded question because everyone's different. And that's the other beauty about the type of medicine that I now practice is I respect individuality. I respect the fact that you are different than I, and what is going to help me may not help you. And as a matter of fact, we both could have low libido, but your treatment's going to look different than mine, depending on what's going on with you. So it's definitely, and I'm not saying that hormones don't come into play. Definitely, especially our female hormones when they're out of balance, or thyroid, or like I said, cortisol with stress definitely can come into play, but we got to look at the big picture there.
That's so interesting. Like the big picture. You don't hear that often from, again, in the medical world until you get into that functional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's see the patient. I was surprised when I moved into the functional world. I think my first appointment was 90 minutes. I was like, a doctor is going to spend 90 minutes with me. Wow. It's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, we take a complete history. We want to know everything. And that was the interesting thing too, is in OBGYN, speaking of libido, I would like a woman to come in. And again, let's kind of go back. I had 20 minutes at most with her, usually 10. Doc, I don't have a libido. And I'm like, oh, like that's not the question I want in 10 minutes. Because number one, I didn't really know what caused a low libido. I still, to this day, we're studying it, and it's different for every woman. But number two, I didn't really have a good quote unquote fix for her. I didn't have that magic pill. Versus when I was in my functional medicine office, and even to this day, I ask every single woman about it. And she's always like, what? What? You're asking me about my sexual desire? I'm like, yeah, it's another symptom of it's low. It's going to help me sort of get, and again, it could be low desire, and it could be fatigue. It could be a lot of different things that point to one underlying cause. So you don't need 50 pills for 50 symptoms. You just need that to help repair the underlying cause. I don't love the word fix. I always find myself using it, but we're not broken, ladies. We don't need to be fixed. We just have something out of balance. And these symptoms are just our body's way of saying, hey, listen to me. There's something going on here.
That's amazing. And I noticed, like you had said before, is that self-care piece is like a big part of like where to start, is just taking that time, taking that pause, slowing your brain down. Because I know that, again, it's like you're speaking to me, which I'm sure is speaking to my entire audience, where at night you lay down and you're like, I've got like 500 things. I'm wide awake now. Okay, I'll go work at my computer for another 4 hours.
Not good. You're not good. Yeah. Yeah, we got to work on that, because that's, definitely disrupting your sleep, which is, disrupts other things as well. But I do find over the past, prior to March of 2020, I did see a lot of women neglecting their self-care. But come 2020, it was just down the drain, because women they already didn't feel worthy enough, or they felt selfish to be prioritizing even 30 minutes for themselves. And back then it looked like maybe manicures, pedicures. It looks a lot different nowadays, but I'm really on this mission of, when we're talking about burnout, because I do think a lot of women are suffering from this to some degree, that we actually have to go back to a couple things. Number one, awareness in our body. How do you feel? Because again, we're go, 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 go. Like if you stop throughout the day, like, how do you feel right now? Like, how was your energy this morning? Did you wake up energized? I know you love what you do, so you probably do, but are you look throughout your day. How's your body feeling? How's your belly feeling? How's your brain? Are you feeling clear? Are you focused? Do you feel like you just want to take a nap all afternoon? And so there's that awareness of how our body feels. And number two, if we think it is related to stressors, what are we stressed about? Like I see a lot of women running around, I'm just so stressed, there's not enough time in the day. Okay, so go back to those D's. What do you have to do? What can you delegate and what can you delete, at least for today? Because there is a part of that list that you can put off for down the road, a couple of weeks, right? But if you just run around saying you're stressed, like you got to kind of pull back and say, what is it exactly? Is it my finances? Is it my work? Or is it the kids? Is it my relationship? What is it? Is it my health? Is it, I know a lot of women, beat themselves over weight because they come to me and say, I want to lose weight. Like the year's been tough on us all, but I get it. But the more, you stress and beat yourself up over all of them, let's just step back. What can we do about it? And little baby steps to help resolve the issue. And then number three, start implementing that self-care back into your life. You are worthy, without you filling your cup to some degree. And again, it doesn't necessarily look like manicures and pedicures and facials anymore. It can look like sitting quietly in the morning with a cup of coffee, reading a book. exercising, going out. If you don't like exercising, just go out in nature first thing in the morning, reset that cortisol, take a walk, listen to the birds, you know, take a nap, take a bubble bath, take, you know, just whatever, but really committing to giving yourself at least 30 minutes a day to do something you love to do is really key to filling up your own cup and healing from burnout.
And I love that it's 30 minutes a day. Like instead of saying, okay, you've got to take this whole day to yourself or block out this huge part of your calendar and do all these things, like 30 minutes a day, we can all stop scrolling for 30 minutes to do something good for us.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to this other woman, a female entrepreneur doctor, who says, like, you look around on the social media and you see all these men doing like these 3-hour morning rituals and this and that. Two things I want to say about that. Number one, you don't need 3 hours. Like if you want to and you have that luxury in your schedule, absolutely do it. But you don't need the 3 hours to take care of yourself. And number two, what I find with men versus women is men are very regimented. They do the same thing every day. Ladies, we cycle. Maybe one day you feel like reading a book. Maybe the next day you feel like taking a walk. Change it up, especially entrepreneurs. I know entrepreneurs love to they love the change, right? That's why we do what we do. But it doesn't have to look the same every day. Don't put that pressure on yourselves. I think we should ourselves too much. Then you should all over yourself. You know, like I don't like that word. Sometimes I say like should. No, I get to, you know, like it's how we talk. But you know, for instance, this morning I got a chance to work out for 45 minutes. It wasn't a punishment. It's what I wanted to do. And then it was longer. I took a 30-minute walk with my dog, listening to something that I wanted to listen to that I didn't want to still listening, but a lot of times it integrates my body better when I'm listening and walking. So, you know, my self-care is done. I got it done before my children got up for the day and I feel great, you know? So, and then again, I'm a much better mom when that happens too, by the way. Like when I can get up and do something for myself before little feet hit the floor, I'm a better wife. I'm a better mom. I'm a better doctor. So much better across the board.
That's like, and it does spill out. Because if you are in that burnout stage, everything in your life feels like it's crumbling. And it is most of the time.
Well, you also get into that mindset of I'm doing for everyone else. What about me? You know, what about me? I see a lot of women, you know, when we talk about libido, going back to the relationship, there's a lot of resentment there because they feel like, what about me? Like I don't feel appreciated. I feel like I'm just doing and I get to do nothing for myself. Well, change that. Like change it now because that resentment is not helping you. It's not helping your relationship. So, and if you vocalize and verbalize what you need and it's still not getting done, well, then we have a problem. But again, most of the times your kids want to help you, especially if they're like, you say like, I just need some help and not get to the point where you're screaming and crying. You know, kids don't really love that. That's kind of a little traumatic, but sometimes that happens. I get it. The other thing I found interesting of what I started to do this year is, you know, when I'm feeling that frustration or that emotion, I let it out. You know, if I want to cry, it's not bad to let people see you cry. Like just cry. Honestly, sometimes a 1 minute, 60-second to 90-second cry, I feel so much better. I'm like, okay, let's keep going. Or scream into your pillow or you know, I don't know, go run a sprint up the street, whatever you need to get that emotion out, just release it because it's sitting in your body, that frustration, that, you know, whatever it is, that anger, that irritability, just get it out, release it. And then you feel so much better to move on and then go do your self-care, then do something you love. But, you know, I definitely think holding these emotions in, especially ones that are low frequency, low vibe, like, you know, worry and anger and irritability and fear, get them out.
I love that. And that's one of the things, I don't know, growing up, I kind of felt like I couldn't let them out because it was always so explosive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you actually prevent it from being explosive if you let it out more frequently. And that was me as well, which is why I made it my, you know, I don't even do resolutions, but 2021, I said, you know, I'm not going to hold my emotions in. Like if I feel like crying, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of something needs to come out. I'm going to release it. And I feel so much better. I don't necessarily always scream. I'm more of a crier. And it's not, you know, it's not like, so if I do this more regularly when I feel the emotion, it doesn't build up into this big, like major meltdown that takes me out for the day, or huge energy drain because I'm holding it all in and not letting it out. So, yeah.
I love that. So where can people find you?
I am all over. I have a website, drrenewellenstein.com. You can learn a little bit about me there. I am all over social media because I do have I'm exclusively online. I just got a message with someone. I do work across state borders because I do not function as a doctor, even though I am still licensed and double board certified. Actually, I'm more of a consultant. So I work short-term with clients. So I'm Dr. Renee Wellenstein, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. I have a podcast. Where else? My podcast is Love the Leap with Dr. Renee because I like to leap. I like to do things just by my gut, and it's mostly a holistic health podcast. So we do a lot of different topics aside from even libido. But, my mission is really just to get this message out about healing naturally, and it is possible for many people, at least even as a adjunct to what you're getting with your regular doc. I really think that in the future, alternative medicine and conventional medicine can be collaborative and not competitive. And I don't view it as competitive, but a lot of my counterparts in the conventional world do. And, when we kind of at the end of the day just realize that we're here for the people, we're here for the patients, and we're here whatever way they want to get better is how we deliver our care. So yeah, come find me in all the places.
I love that. And I love how you're talking about like someday in the future, it'll be a collaboration. I am so excited. I wish it was tomorrow, but I'm glad that it's starting. I'm starting to see it kind of come in. Like my conventional doctor sent me to an acupuncturist that's actually at our conventional hospital. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. I'm like so excited to see this coming in, and I'm hoping it comes in stronger within my lifetime because it is so needed. And I love what you're doing in your practice.
Thank you. Yeah, it is needed. And I do think we can get a lot more people healthier long term. I always say that what I did as an OB, it was important. I delivered the babies, I did the surgeries, but it was more reactive healthcare. I waited for someone to come in to my office with a problem, and then I either did the surgery. The baby's not a problem. I delivered the baby, or I gave a medication. And I like to think now I'm more proactive. We try to prevent things. If you have a family history, knowing yes, you have the genetics, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get the disease, or if you have a mutation, or you see whatever in your family, it actually, that should fuel your fire to prevent any of the whatever your family has in the future, and knowing it's in your power to be able to do it. Just, again, most of it can be done by anyone. And again, it's simple, but it's not easy to try to eat real foods and try to kick those packaged processed foods that came about because of convenience. It came about to serve a need for our population of people that are always in a rush. So the food industry, I'm often like putting them down as far as some food, ingredients that I don't really love, but they saw a huge, as an entrepreneur in these companies, like marketing, like a huge niche of convenient food. How can we make it faster, easier, sit on the shelf longer, sit in the freezer longer? That's where these foods came from. And they're not good for us, but we've all become dependent on them because we need that, what is fastest, what is easiest, in our really high paced world. And I have children that are starting to be very busy themselves with sports and such. I'm like, but I see it already starting at a younger generation, that they're not as calm as I was as a kid. I played with Barbies and rode my bike. There was no phones, social media, all the things. So I think our kids are even starting out a lot more hyped up and stressed than I was. I'm much older than you, but I was as a kid. So, it's just something to keep in mind for the parents out there as well.
That's really interesting. That's one of the things that like I notice in my nieces and nephews. I'm like, I couldn't imagine growing up with social media and the amount of stress. Like, you're right. We were out playing. We were doing those things that were good for our bodies. We were soaking up those sun rays and the vitamin D and playing. And now I see this addiction, and it's like information overload all the time. And the comparison started so much earlier for them. And I'm like, I'm excited that this is part of like your mission and you're seeing it in your kids. And I'm glad that there are doctors out there that are seeing the effects so that maybe we can make a change before it's too late.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting with children. This is something I listen to a lot. I'm a lifetime learner. I love learning. And it's a great observation that when we are little, like we have no stress because all we want to do is play. We're just playing 24/7. And nowadays our kids are losing that a lot sooner because of social media. But even as adults, like I encourage my community, my women, play more, have fun, laugh. It's a natural stress reducer, like do something that, again, stop being so fixed in your schedule and go do something fun, schedule it in if you have to go by your schedule, but definitely, play more. That's all I can say. And I walk the walk and talk the talk. I'm definitely trying to play more and laugh more and not be that really rigid doctor that you see so many doctors like, gotta do this and gotta wake up. And no, I play a lot more. I have fun because I lead by example, and I know I want to be around people that are laughing and having fun. So energy is contagious. So just go, make it a mission every day to get a little self-care and have fun doing it.
So I have to ask the question, what are some of your favorite ways to add fun and play into your life?
I spend a lot of time with my kids. My daughter plays basketball. So when you're a mom, some things of your fun are like watching your kids have fun. So I take her through all different states, and we have girls' weekends together where she plays basketball, but we go out to dinner, and we hang out in a hotel and we laugh, and we sightsee different cities. In this summer, I have a boat. We have a boat on a beautiful lake. So I'm out in the boat a lot because, again, for me, the water, I love water, and being on the water is just so soothing to my soul. And it's actually, for the entrepreneurs out there, doing a lot of these, being on the water, taking walks, that's where I get my most creative downloads of how I can change lives. Like how best can I deliver life-changing programs or whatever for women. It's on these times where I'm not working, I'm playing. I'm taking my nice walk with my dog, again, 30-minute walk through town this morning was gorgeous. Or I go down by the lake and sit, or again, out in the boat. Like I'm not working, I'm playing. But during those times, I always grab my phone if I have an idea and I write it down as a note so I don't forget it. And then I move on. And it's amazing how it's really great when you're sitting at your desk and you're trying to work and you're trying to force some idea to come in your head. Sometimes you just got to walk away and go outside, go out to dinner, go meet a girlfriend for coffee. We haven't, again, done too much of that lately, but I see it's happening more. And so now, ladies, I'm not saying men don't need connection, but women really thrive on connection, especially female connection. And I see that's another component of burnout for women is we haven't had that for a year. And we've been nonstop with our partners in the house for a year, but we really have not been connected because the kids haven't left us. So there's been no date nights. There's been no alone time with your significant other. It's like the kids are always around. You can't go out. You can't see your girlfriends. I love Zoom, but it's really not the same with literally sitting down at a restaurant or over a cup of coffee with your girlfriends or a glass of wine and just talking and connecting. So just I've done that too recently again, like gone out with my girlfriends and just relaxed, and laugh and have fun and don't think about anything serious.
I love that.
What about you? What do you do for fun?
I ride horses.
Oh,
that's my big fun is my best friend has horses, so I get to go ride all the time. So I get my female connection and my horse connection. Good. And we go for walks every day with my dog. And I'm a fire wife, so I had that last year of being home by myself most of the year with the dog. And I'm like, interesting. So I'm sure it was the same with having a physician as a husband during last year because they didn't come home much.
Nope. No, I feel your pain. Yeah.
And then anything I'm 20 minutes from the ocean. I don't go enough, but it's Northern California ocean. So don't think the Southern California wonderful beaches, like they're cold, rocky, but they are still just amazing. So those are my fun things, is just kind of that I need to do more of. And I know that this isn't coming out until August, but I'm leaving for Costa Rica on Friday for like my first real retreat, like women's retreat. So I'm like, I'm excited.
I love Costa Rica. Oh, I love it. We went to two different areas in the past, and it's just probably one of my favorite destinations I've ever been to. So truly enjoy the people, enjoy the food. The people are wonderful there that live there, and the food is amazing. So just enjoy.
It's the first trip in 6 years that I'm not bringing my laptop on.
Yay!
Excited.
That's so good. Yeah, truly unplug, which is good.
So I want to leave you with my favorite, well, they're all my favorite questions because I get to talk to amazing people. But if somebody walked away with just that one like mic drop moment, what would it be? What would you want them to walk away with?
To the ladies out there, you are enough. You are worthy. Um, you. It's not selfish to feel good. It's not. You are worthy to invest in yourself, both financially and emotionally and time wise, to feel as good as you can possibly feel. And a lot of women don't know even what good feels like anymore. I don't want you to feel good. I want you to feel amazing, and you are worth it, and you are already enough. You don't need to do anything, prove anything to be enough. You are enough.